yeah, that phrase, well, this is the way we've always done it, right? The way you do it is you hire hosts, you got producers, anchors, you got a promotions team, you got two station vehicles, you got a street team that goes out that does your remotes and stuff. Maybe you've got one digital guy. Well, if I was starting a radio station today, that's absolutely not the way I would staff it. I would maybe, cut that promotion staff probably in half, dump a vehicle, hire 3 more digital people. Hire update anchors that really are more social media people, because why would you pay someone to sit there for 30 minutes at a time waiting for the next 60-second update? They need to be doing something else. I think as we talk about all day-to-day, there's all sorts of different platforms that we're supposed to be programming to, yet we're staffed exactly the same way we were 10 years ago. Well, the world has changed completely, and we're supposed to be putting together original content for speakers with who? We've got to make tough decisions, I think, moving forward about really the way the world is now is what we need to be programming to, not the FM or AM transmitter necessarily. I mean, that's still important, but how do we kind of transition our staff and our resources? We talked about a P&L earlier in the back. That's not going to change and get any better. They're not going to give us, a new budget for digital moving forward. So we're going to have to be creative and make tough decisions, I think, about how we're going to, run our business. I can reach more people myself tweeting from our station account on my phone than our entire promotions team can in a week, probably, with one tweet. So why am I paying for those leases, for those cars? Why do we have a street team with 10 people? I don't know. We got to figure that out.
Can you guys talk about, on the network level, evolving talent from the old school way of thinking of, you're there to do your 4 and hit the door, as opposed to, you've got to do your radio show plus.
So what I've noticed on the national side, typically a talent who's making it on the national level, they've excelled at all of these other platforms, whether it's social media, podcasting, because to get to that national level, you have to have such a brand that encompasses many platforms, whether it's social, digital, TV, radio. So typically on the network level, I have not found that our talent are reluctant to participate outside of their radio shows. Frequently, they want to do more. And I'll give you an example. Doug Gottlieb, I cannot stop him for the life of me from working 24 hours a day. If it were up to him, he'd do 12 hours of radio a day, he'd do 3 hours of TV, hop on a red eye, do a game the next morning, etc. So typically on the national level, I have to slow my folks down to do less and to make each word they say that much more worthwhile than begging them to do more. So they get it, but ultimately I want their words to have value, whether it's a spoken word, whether it's digitally. The key is always, and it's what I said at the start, it's thinking about the listener. It's making sure they come first, as opposed to just what your talent wants to do or how they want to make their own money.
Yeah, and I would also say, think about the listener or the audience, but not just through Nielsen. I know Nielsen is still where we have to go, and that's where our revenue is connected to, and we got our books in the last 2 days, and we spent time pulling reports and looking at it. But when 1 or 2 panelists can completely shift a marketplace, even in a top 5 market, I think you got to spend a lot less time on the Nielsen side in traditional radio and a lot more time talking with talent and talking to your building about how we really evaluate success or not. And we've got how many other measurement devices and tools that we can use for that, and telling, I was hearing earlier today, we need to focus more on total line reporting. I don't think so. I think it's just total audience measurement in general and telling a bigger brand story. When we tell our talent in Phoenix that the audience on ArizonaSports.com is 3 to 4 times as large as our radio queue, according to Nielsen. We have months where our stream is larger than that, right? So what are we using as a tool as programmers and as content leaders to push our talent in that direction? And I think it's less and less Nielsen as we move forward.
Let me add on to that too. What Scott was saying, it's not that tough to get some of the network talent to want to be able to do podcasts. They love doing it. I've got a classic example of that is Mike Golick. He's in a couple of Hall of Fames, been around for 20 plus years, pretty well established, I'd say. He has voluntarily said, I'm going to start doing a podcast. I'm like, oh, okay, great, this will be interesting. Well, he's got his family doing, in fact, they're taping one right now. But I've used that, and I've used the metrics off of that to make him a better radio host. It's taking the information that we get, and when a lot of times people will look at the digital numbers, say how many downloads, how long are they listening for. dig deeper into that number. Look a little bit more into it to find out when people are leaving the podcast. So, for example, one of the episodes that they put together, there was some content in there which was not meeting what you would expect the Golick family to talk about, or what the Golick brand has begun to represent. And it's like, no, it's great, it's great, it's great. Well, I looked at the metrics afterwards, and people were disappearing after that content ended up airing. So I put it in front of them, like, this is what you need to see. This is why when you veer away from the expectation of who you are and what the listener wants, that's when you're going to start losing your audience. So the next time they did it, they kept it in that lane, and then the numbers had stayed up. They had 85% continuous listening rate, that sort of thing. So I'm trying to use the metrics that we have